welcome back everyone for a sneaky secret Cobra Kai Season 6 watch party. Not long ago, shooting wrapped in Atlanta and they had the wrap party. Many of us were taken by surprise. It was finishing sooner than expected. We had several indications that production was going to run for 6 if not even 7 months. They finished in about 5. Now certainly they didn't finish production completely. No one, other than clickbait content creators, claimed they did. There will likely be on-location shoots to come, certainly in Los Angeles. These iconic scenes have a lot of memories and you definitely want to see them in the final season. But usually those shots are done pretty quickly, 1 or 2 days at the max. That doesn't account for the missing month or more of production time that just evaporated. Now, in full fairness, a good chunk of the missing time can be explained by an aggressive production schedule. Due to the strike last year, Netflix has big gaps in their release slate. They need big hit shows to fill in those gaps, and obviously Cobra Kai is one of them. They wanted that July release to have something in the summer and the November release to give them something near the end of the year. However, in order to actually accomplish that, shit had to get moving. It seems they upped the normal work week to 6 or even 7 days to push through the season at a rapid pace. That would definitely put them ahead of schedule and explains partially why they were able to get more accomplished in less time. Except it doesn't seem to explain everything, especially if we assume the final episode or 2 will run longer than normal. Where is this extra production time going? What's going on? I may have stumbled upon the answer. I recently released a preview of Season 6, which featured a list of the writers. Now, in the video, I was mostly focused on the first 5 because that is what's coming in Part 1 on July 18th. However, it's worth noting there is something missing here. You see it? We somehow skipped from Episode 11 to Episode 13. What? That's weird. What happened? Why is there no Episode 12? Did it go missing like Grey 17? An astute absence, no Episode 12. What's going on? Well, let's examine the list a little closer and focus on Parts 2 and 3. Right off, you should know I've been predicting for a while that Part 2 will focus on the Sekai Taikai. Episode 10 will be the grand karate finale on the world stage. However it goes, it will be huge. Episode 11, the first episode of Part 3, will likely deal with the fallout of how the tournament ended. Now, if you look closely, you'll see something interesting. The writing credits for Episode 11 were finalized over 3 weeks before Episodes 9 and 10. While there could be a lot of reasons, such as Joe and Luan were just able to get the script in sooner, I strongly suspect there's more at play here because rewrites happen consistently throughout the production process. I think they shot Episode 11 before Episodes 9 and 10. It's normal to shoot out of order, and there are probably a lot of post-tournament scenes that needed to be filmed first. The reason for that is they can then spend a few weeks focusing only on the big major fight scenes. The fights are the most exhaustive part of production because all the actors first have to train, then have to go through the shoot in the allotted time available. It's very jam-packed. So when shooting big fight scenes, they need to focus on nothing else but that. But either way, if we continue on from 425, we can see Episode 13 was finalized on May 3rd. That's a little over a week later and follows a pretty normal production schedule. It's as if they finished Episodes 9 and 10, then went straight to Episode 13. After 13 was done, they moved on to the final 2 episodes of the series. So if you look at Parts 2 and 3 as a whole, you can see a natural progression of the shooting schedule and timeline. They shot the first 3 episodes in March. Then they bounced all the way to Episode 11 and finished that one. They then took on the karate and action-heavy Episodes 9 and 10 for the conclusion of the Sekai Taikai. It was certainly a lot of work. After finishing Episode 10, they jumped to Episode 13 and then finished that. Finally rounding out with Episodes 14 and 15. It all makes sense, it follows a natural progression. But then, what happened to Episode 12? Why isn't it here? The answer to that has to connect with our question of why the shooting schedule seemed to suddenly shorten. They're not finished filming Episode 12 yet, thus the final credits haven't yet been submitted. If this is the case, that would mean a lot of Episode 12 is going to be filmed on location. Somewhere? LA maybe, but I strongly suspect a lot of it may take place in Okinawa. That is the most logical location, as Chosen would probably return there after the tournament and he has to hook up with Kumiko. Hubba hubba. Now, I don't think the entirety of episode 12 is in Okinawa, so some of it may have already been shot, just not all or even most of it. I also don't think Chozen would return to Okinawa alone. Very likely Daniel will go with him. He may even bring Sam and Anthony along. I mean, or not, I've been wrong about that one before. But still, Daniel would very likely go with him. A potential storyline is things went south while Chozen was away. Perhaps a rival dojo opened up and is now threatening to take over karate in Okinawa. It would feel like the same story all over again, but this time set in exotic locales. But I don't mean that as a negative thing. It would make sense that if Chozen had been away for a long time, things happened in his absence. Another possibility is some developer wants to reshape Tomi Village in a sort of echo of the story of Karate Kid 2. If it's not Okinawa, or perhaps even addition to Okinawa itself, there is another important possibility we should consider. We have very little backstory of Mr. Miyagi and his time in Okinawa before he left. He was also still pretty young when he had that dispute with Sato and chose to flee. If you've been around, you know that I and many others have been speculating for years now that a spin-off series would be about Mr. Miyagi in his younger years. Now, if you're at all familiar with standard television work, often a successful series will set up its spin-off series in the final season. I've suspected for a while they may set up a spin-off season somewhere in part 3. Well, ask yourself, if they were going to set up a Miyagi spin-off show in part 3, which episode do you think that would be? Not the last episode, surely, but also not the beginning when you have the fallout from the Sekai Takai. Maybe, how about episode 12? It's in the final stretch, but not the very end climax episodes. The show still has to go out with a bang. I believe episode 12 will be the key episode to set up the spin-off and may even give us our first look at a new, young Mr. Miyagi. They could cast an actor as a guest star in this episode with the intention of making him the regular for the new series. The story would involve Daniel and Chozen discovering the truth about Mr. Miyagi and Sato all those years ago. It's intertwined with the present day story of Chozen dealing with trouble back in Okinawa and Daniel trying to help him. It establishes enough backstory for Daniel to understand and ultimately complete this story, while hinting at a lot more to come from Miyagi and his spin-off. There's another fair question to ask. Who wrote episode 12? If you look through the lineup, the strongest staff writers each wrote 3 episodes. The newer writers wrote 1 or 2. Obviously, John, Josh, and Hayden wrote the finale. Some have speculated maybe this was written by Michael Jonathan Smith. However, that is very unlikely because he had to leave Cobra Kai and work on his own show, Twisted Metal. He was done. As it is, his leaving is probably why Ashley Darnell was brought in to script 2 episodes, but that's something else entirely. My guess is episode 12 is written by John, Josh, and Hayden, as it focuses heavily on backstory and is serving as a setup for the Miyagi spinoff. It makes sense they would want to knock that one out themselves. There's also like WGA money reasons about introducing new characters and such, which plays into it, but the main reason would be they wanted to write the character correctly. Speaking of writing the character correctly, could Robert Mark Kamen be part of this? It's worth noting that Kamen has previously said no one could write Mr. Miyagi other than him. He felt like Miyagi had a certain voice that really only he knew and could access, as Mr. Miyagi is based on several people from his life. There's probably truth to that. I could very well believe Robert Mark Kamen co-wrote this episode with the Big Three, or even scripted it himself. He is a working writer, he's reminded us of that. If and when this credit gets filled in, we will certainly know for sure. On the other hand, if they wait until the end to fill this in, we can also draw conclusions from that. If something else happens, we just have to see. I have a great video on how Mr. Miyagi could show up in this episode. I also have a preview for part 1 of season 6 that you don't want to miss. Have a great day, I'll see you at the next watch party.